Order! Order! You are an incorrigible delinquent at times. Behave yourself, man!
The US Director of National Intelligence has rejected suggestions made by Donald Trump that official intelligence agencies leaked claims that Russia had compromising material on him. In a statement, James Clapper said he called the president-elect to say the information had not come from the security services. Our Washington correspondent Laura Bicker has the story.
Donald Trump is not a huge fan of the press corps. But he had a message to send to the media and to US intelligence agencies. He believes they leaked unsubstantiated allegations that his election team colluded with Russia.
It's all fake news. It's phony stuff. It didn't happen.
There are also claims that Russian spies have compiled material to blackmail Mr. Trump, including salacious videos of his private life.
Does anyone really believe that story? I'm also very much of a germaphobe, by the way. Believe me.
The BBC understands the Russian memos on Mr. Trump were compiled by a former member of MI6, Christopher Steele. The Director of National Intelligence, James Clapper, has now called the president-elect. He said the leak did not come from within US intelligence, and they have not made any judgment that the information is reliable. As Donald Trump moved the media towards his business dealings, he confirmed he was handing total control of his empire to his two sons.
These papers are just some of the many documents that I've signed, turning over complete and total control to my sons.
That too is proving troublesome. The Ethics Committee has now said his plan does not meet past presidential standards. This performance was a typically eccentric and bombastic piece of political theatre, which his supporters will love. But it did little to calm the swirl of controversies which surround this president-elect. Laura Bicker, BBC News, Washington.
Let's go live to Moscow now to talk to our correspondent Sarah Rainsford there. What does Russia say about these sex allegations?
Well, Russia has dismissed them outright. Essentially, what we've heard here from the Kremlin is the spokesman talking about it as pulp fiction, and then a whole series of politicians over the last day and today as well saying it's just anti-Russian hysteria. They're suggesting that Donald Trump is coming under pressure from those who don't want better relations between Moscow and Washington, that this is all invention, fabrication, utter nonsense. So that's basically the line that's coming from the Kremlin. There's been a lot of focus, of course, on this issue, and a lot of focus as well on that press conference yesterday, people watching for any signals from Donald Trump about whether or not his position on Russia had changed. And people here were fairly positive as a result of what he said. They saw him again speaking positively of Russia and tended to gloss over the negative side of what he said, which was to say, OK, I want to be friends with Vladimir Putin. I hope that's possible. If it's not, then don't expect me to be soft on him, which is pretty much the message that Donald Trump gave yesterday.
Is it possible the Russians could be behind false sex allegations about Mr. Trump in order to potentially destabilise the incoming president?
Well, I mean, in theory, anything's possible, I guess. I mean, certainly there are different theories about what, if anything, Russia might have been up to in terms of its alleged interference in the election campaign. And whilst one of the theories has always been that President Putin and Russia generally wanted Donald Trump to win the presidency and to have an ally in the White House, the other theory has always been that Russia simply wanted to mess things up in America, that it wanted to undermine democracy generally, it wanted to undermine a sort of liberal system there in America, and just wanted to create questions and doubts about the entire liberal democracy of the United States. And if that was the intention, then I suppose you could say that perhaps in some way it has succeeded, at least in throwing the cat amongst the pigeons.
Sarah Rainsford in Moscow, many thanks. Let's bring you the 8 days before his inauguration. President-elect Donald Trump is facing the extraordinary claim that he's vulnerable to blackmail by the Russians. It all centres around unsubstantiated allegations which the Russians are said to have compiled about his private and professional life. The allegations are contained in a dossier written by a former British spy. Speaking in his first press conference for 6 months, the president-elect suggested the American intelligence agencies could be responsible for leaking the claims. But overnight, the US intelligence chief has denied this. Mr. Trump was openly contemptuous of CNN and BuzzFeed, the main US outlets responsible for publicising the sex dossier, although it was BuzzFeed who published the actual details. Let's have a watch.
Go ahead.
No, Mr. President-elect.
Go ahead.
President-elect,
Go ahead.
Since you are attacking
No,
our news
not you.
organization,
Not you.
Can you give us a chance?
Your organization
you
is
are attacking
terrible.
our news organization.
Your organization
Can you give
is
us a
terrible.
chance
Let's
to
go.
ask a question, sir?
Go ahead.
Sir,
Quiet.
can you state,
Quiet.
Mr. President-elect.
Go ahead.
Can you
She's
state
asking a
categorically-
question.
Mr.
Don't be rude.
President-elect,
I'm not going to give you a question.
Can you state categorically?
You are fake news. I think it was disgraceful that the intelligence agencies allowed any information that turned out to be so false and fake out. I think it's a disgrace. And that's something that Nazi Germany would have done and did do. I think it's a disgrace. I'm also very much of a germaphobe, by the way. Believe me. As far as BuzzFeed, which is a failing pile of garbage, writing it, I think they're going to suffer the consequences. They already are. As far as hacking, I think it was Russia, but I think we also get hacked by other countries and other people. If Putin likes Donald Trump, guess what, folks? That's called an asset, not a liability. Now, I don't know that I'm going to get along with Vladimir Putin. I hope I do, but there's a good chance I won't. And if I don't, do you honestly believe that Hillary would be tougher on Putin than me? Does anybody in this room really believe that? Give me a break. We could make deals in Russia very easily if we wanted to. I just don't want to because I think that would be a conflict. So I have no loans, no dealings, and no current pending deals. Now,
every president since the 70s has had a
gee, I've
required
never
audit
heard that.
from the IRS.
Oh,
The
gee,
last
I've never
six
heard
that
that.
released them. But as
I've never heard that.
president, sir,
You know, the
as
only
you
one that
take
cares about my tax returns are the reporters. We're going to build a wall. I don't feel like waiting a year or a year and a half. We're going to start building. Mexico, in some form, and there are many different forms, will reimburse us. And these papers are all just a piece of the many, many companies that are being put into trust to be run by my two sons. And I hope at the end of 8 years I'll come back and I'll say, oh, you did a good job. Otherwise, if they do a bad job, I'll say, you're fired. Goodbye, everybody. Goodbye.
Well, Mr. Trump completely rubbished those unsubstantiated allegations, calling them fake news. They've also been dismissed by Moscow, as you heard from our correspondent a few moments ago, as pulp fiction. But their significance is that, if true, the president-elect of the United States will be vulnerable to blackmail by the Russians. So how did they get leaked? The head of the US intelligence, James Clapper, denied that the 35-page dossier came from his operatives. He's also said his teams haven't decided yet whether or not the information is reliable. BBC correspondent Paul Wood says the author of the Trump dossier is a British ex-spy called Christopher Steele. He was formerly an MI6 officer who has worked in Moscow. Mr. Steele has now fled his home in Surrey and gone into hiding after telling his neighbour to look after his cat. My correspondent says Mr. Steele's highly respected in the intelligence community. That's why the claims in the dossier, although salacious and unverified, were said to have been taken so seriously by US intelligence and, of course, ended up on President Obama's desk last week. Have a listen to Paul Wood.
Well, let's not lose sight of the central allegation here, which is that Donald Trump, President-elect of the United States, is vulnerable to blackmail by the Russians. That is such an extraordinary claim. So much depends on the credibility of the author of this dossier. He has now been named as Christopher Steele, a former MI6 agent who was in Moscow in the early 1990s. And speaking to one intelligence source, he is apparently very highly regarded among his peers as competent and trustworthy. And that reputation, I think, is one of the main reasons why what he said, the allegations he repeated from Russian security officers, were taken so seriously by the American intelligence institutions. I spoke to one intermediary. You can't speak to CIA case officers directly, but I spoke to an intermediary, and a message came back from the people dealing with this file that they found it credible, that there was more than one tape, that there was an audio tape as well as a videotape, that there were several times that these activities supposedly took place, and in more than one location, not just the Ritz-Carlton in Moscow, but St. Petersburg as well. Now, the fact that the CIA apparently finds these allegations credible and credible enough to put on President Obama's desk is not them saying they believe the allegations, they are just saying they are worthy of consideration. One further thing, this former MI6 officer is not the only source. I spoke to a retired spy last August who said he had been told of the existence of a blackmail tape by the head of an East European intelligence agency over the summer. We should stress in all of this, these are just allegations, and Mr. Trump is literally correct when he says they are unsubstantiated. Nevertheless, Americans are in the incredible position, 9 days before the inauguration, of having to decide whether their president-elect is a Russian agent of influence.
Paul Wood, our correspondent. Well, we're going to talk to various American voters later on in the programme. We've got one now, Philip Clemens in Kentucky, and also with us we've got Dr. Brian Klaas, a fellow in politics at the London School of Economics. We've got Alana Horowitz from the Huffington Post website and Dr. Leslie Vinjamuri from the think tank Chatham House's America programme. Welcome, all of you. Let me start with you, Philip, as a man who voted for Donald Trump not that long ago. Do you believe the sex allegations?
To believe in what allegation?
The sex allegations around Donald Trump.
The sex allegations?
Yes.
Oh, I'm not sure about, whether or not. I don't know if there's any proof out there, really.
Right. So you're not clear. So if true, would it be an issue for you that Mr. Trump allegedly consulted with prostitutes in a Moscow hotel room a few years ago?
It wouldn't be a good thing, but these presidents has probably done it before.
Is that a fair point, Dr. Brian Klaas?
I think that the allegations are deeply troubling, and I don't think that we know whether they're true yet.
No, we definitely don't.
Right.
We definitely don't.
Right. But what I would like to say is that even if you take the dossier out of this, remember the last time Donald Trump held a press conference 167 days ago, he invited Russia to hack into Hillary Clinton's emails. He literally said, please find them. He also has a campaign manager who has been...
so Russia does what Donald Trump says?
Well, no, my point is that the allegations go beyond the dossier, right? That there has been a pattern of behavior where Donald Trump has deeply troubling ties to Moscow in the sense that his former campaign manager received payments or kickbacks in eastern Ukraine from a pro-Russian politician.
He says he's got, as we heard in that press conference, no dealings with Russia. And there's no way he could be a victim of blackmail because the sex allegations are untrue, they're fake, they're false, and business dealings with Russia, there are none.
But this is the crucial point, because he is the first candidate since the 1970s to not release his tax returns. If he doesn't have any dubious dealings, he hasn't paid any bribes.
He says they're being audited.
Release the tax returns.
Right now.
Yeah, and the head of the IRS says that's no problem. You can still release them. It's totally your prerogative. And every single candidate in American history since 1970 has done this. So it's very easily verifiable. He should do it.
Okay. Alana Horowitz from the Huffington Post website, what do you think?
I agree with Brian. I think that, we can't really take the dossier at face value. Perhaps it's most troubling that
Is it not interesting to you that a former British spy wrote it and it ended up on Barack Obama's desk? As Paul Wood said, our correspondent, those kind of reports don't end up on a president's desk unless there's something credible about it.
Right. Well, intelligence officials told CNN that he is a trustworthy source, and I think that's why they felt comfortable, putting out the report that there was these blackmail allegations. And as much as the salacious sex allegations are, they're fun to read headlines about, that's only a small piece of the puzzle.
No, absolutely. But again, just to say,
the rest of it is
Paul Wood
more troubling.
Paul Wood, our correspondent, says he has been told by an intermediary, not a source at the CIA, but an intermediary, that there is a tape. There's more than one tape. This happened in not just Moscow, but St. Petersburg.
Right. Well, I think that, we still don't really know how credible all of this is. But I think it speaks kind of volumes that a lot of voters and experts, believe that it could possibly happen. Like, it doesn't seem that out of character based on his other Russia ties, based on his behavior. I mean, based on his past from before he was running for office. And I think that does speak a lot to, his trustworthiness. His approval rating has kind of tanked in recent days, too.
Let me bring in Dr. Vinjamuri from Chatham House, which is a think tank from the America programme there. How are you reading all this?
My concern, of course, we're waiting to see, because it's being given a lot of scrutiny now to whether or not the veracity of this dossier. But I think the real concern right now is Donald Trump's response to it, right? So we're looking to see how is this going to affect the next president's relationship with the intelligence agencies. This is not looking good. How will this affect America's relationship with Russia? What are the implications? And so I think measuring his response, it was very interesting yesterday, of course, to watch his interactions with the media. His attacks on the intelligence agencies, I think, are in some ways, the most deeply troubling part of this.
He's at war with his own intelligence agencies.
That's right. And so the response that I think we would be looking for is these are very serious allegations, not only the dossier, which of course he's going to have a personal response to, but the broader question of this disinformation campaign. And to me, that's potentially the more troubling part, right? If these allegations that he was aware of or even engaged with the broader disinformation campaign or the cyber attacks, the hacking, then we have a very serious national security problem on our hands.
So where does it go from here? Because there are senators like John McCain, a Republican, no fan of Donald Trump, though, talking about hearings. We're going to have hearings with the intelligence agencies about the claims, possibly impeachment. This is before Donald Trump's inaugurated.
Yeah, so there's also the timing is difficult. I mean, bear in mind this has been framed as the worst kept secret in Washington. Plenty of people have seen this dossier. It's not new news for people in think tanks and elsewhere. So I think there was a sense that it needed to be dealt with. But the timing is, of course, very difficult because it's at the same time that, yesterday was quite extraordinary. The confirmation hearings for Tillerson, the Secretary of State, at the same time as the news conference. And it's hard to know where to put one's focus.
Well, explain to our audience what the significance of that is in your mind.
So one's going back and forth between Tillerson really discussing the future of U.S. engagement with Russia, being asked very clear questions. Would he stick to sanctions? At the same time that the president-elect is being forced to respond to questions about whether he himself was engaged and had knowledge of Russia's attempts to hack into and influence the U.S. elections. So those are contingencies, right? They're developments that affect each other. Tillerson, said very clearly that his view would be that we should stick to the status quo until there's a more comprehensive strategy for the U.S. relationship with Russia.
Okay. As a voter, Philip, do you want to see Donald Trump's tax returns?
I'd be all right to see them, but I don't think it's. I don't know exactly what all you're going to get out of the tax returns, but I mean, it'd probably clear up a few things for people if he would, satisfy a few people if he would show them.
Are you interested in an explanation as to why he hasn't so far, or does that not bother you?
I mean, I'm not too worried about it. I figure somewhere along the line he'll eventually have to show them, but I don't think it's that big of a deal to me.
Dr. Klass, where are you on relations between the US and Russia? We heard Donald Trump in that press conference yesterday say, look, if I get on with Putin, that's an asset. Come on, it is. And he's right there, isn't he?
I don't think so, because the reason why the U.S. and Russia are not friends is because Russia's foreign policy is predicated on undermining liberal Western democracy on the global stage.
But if Donald Trump became friends with President Putin, perhaps President Putin would change his approach.
Well, I think that's a very naive assessment, because every president that's underestimated Vladimir Putin's savviness on the global stage has been outfoxed by him, and it's something where Vladimir Putin is an authoritarian thug, and at some point we have to acknowledge that the American values do not correspond with Russian values on the global stage, and that foreign policy disconnect exists for a reason. I also think that it's deeply troubling that Tillerson, who we're talking about, the Secretary of State nominee, he was awarded the Order of Friendship, the highest civilian honor, by Vladimir Putin. And so even outside this dossier, even if all of these claims are false, there's deeply troubling allegations about these ties between the soon-to-be most powerful man in the Western world, who is the linchpin of Western liberal democracy, and how much he's willing to do to get along with Vladimir Putin. Is he going to lift sanctions and say, look, your invasion of eastern Ukraine and the Crimea, you're going to get a free pass for it. You're going to get a free pass for hacking into an election and trying to influence American voting. I mean, those things are troubling. And I think at some point you have to stand up to them and say enough.
Alana?
Yeah, I completely agree with that. I think we have much more to lose than to gain by Putin and Trump becoming chums. I think that...
Why not try it?
Well, I think that Trump is very vulnerable to being influenced. He's proven to himself to be very gullible. The conspiracies that he's brought up over the years. I mean, I think one point that people were bringing up yesterday is that he's attacking the media for, bringing up unverified claims. But he's the one who, first started bringing up the idea that Obama wasn't born in the U.S. I mean, that was the most unverified claim that I can really think of in modern politics.
Quick final thought from you, Alana, from the Huffington Post website. Should BuzzFeed have published a dossier with unverified and unverifiable claims, and on which with a warning, which they put, saying, we seriously doubt these allegations are true?
Personally, I wouldn't have. I understand their logic as to why they did, which is that, well, we had the report out already that there was this dossier. People are going to debate it. They have the right to know exactly what they're debating. Again, I probably wouldn't have, but I understand why they did.
OK. Thank you all very much. Thanks for coming on the programme.
Thank you.
Thank you. Really interested to know if you believe the sex allegations. And let me know if you think BuzzFeed should have published the dossier when it is unverified and unverifiable. And even they said, as they published it, we doubt these allegations are true. Let's talk to our security correspondent, Frank Gardner. OK, who is Christopher Steele and why is he now at the centre of this story?
I have to say, you could not make up a more salacious, more fascinating story of sex, of intrigue, of political machinations than this one. And trying to peer into it and find out what is true and what is not is quite difficult. But it's fascinating. Christopher Steele is a former intelligence officer. He's 50-something. He's a Brit. He's a former IO intelligence officer for the Secret Intelligence Service, better known as MI6. He wasn't an agent. He was an officer. So he would have run agents. He would have operated as an intelligence gatherer for Britain's overseas intelligence arm. He works or has worked for something called Orbis, which is a business intelligence firm in Britain. And he is the author of a dossier, a 35-page dossier, which was compiled last year and which he thought contained, or said contained, such scurrilous details about President-elect Trump that he handed it to the FBI in August. Now, he was allegedly hired by Trump's opponents to compile stuff in this. And the
opponents in America or
in America,
potentially Russia?
In America.
Right, okay.
Well, the allegations that are in this, and this has been published, by the way, not by the intelligence agencies in the States who deny that they've leaked this, but it's leaked out. 35 pages of this. With, and I think you kind of alluded to it in the queue, some pretty salacious details about goings-on in a Moscow hotel room. I don't know if did you ever see From Russia with Love, the film, the Bond film? Yeah. It bears a striking similarity to the fake glass, the basically filming somebody's sexual activities from behind a two-way mirror. So there's all of that involved. Donald Trump has said it's absolute nonsense, it's fake news. Last night, an email went round from the Directorate of National Intelligence in Washington, going around to all the journalists and to everybody, saying, we did not leak this. We've briefed the President-elect, we've briefed the FBI, we've talked to everybody, we've talked to the President, and we didn't leak it.
If the US intelligence agencies are briefing the President, Barack Obama, the President-elect, Donald Trump, the FBI, does that mean, what does that mean? What is the significance of that? Because if it's false, if it's fake, why would it land up on Barack Obama's desk?
That's a very good point. I mean, once it got handed to the FBI and was assessed in August, it started to get taken seriously because I suspect that there are elements of it that are true and elements which are not. There are some misspellings of names which are causing people to say, well, hang on a sec. Now, people who my colleagues have spoken to have said Christopher Steele is a serious player. He was a respected intelligence officer, and like many of them, they start second careers about the age of 50. They leave MI6 or MI5 or wherever they're working, or in the States, CIA, FBI, and then they start working for far more money with much more freedom. They work for business intelligence, and he is one of those. It's unusual, I have to say, for someone to be so involved in politics, because obviously the intelligence officers have to be completely apolitical. Okay. But he's in the private sector. Probably there was a fair bit of money involved. The Russians are delighted that this is being denied by Trump, and one of their organs has put out, has sort of retweeted what Donald Trump has said, that he has had no dealings with them. The allegations are that the Russians, in this dossier, that the Russians have got compromising material on Donald Trump.
And that involves a tape.
It involves a tape, it involves details of basically a hold that they've got over him. So you can see that, you know, given that this guy in less than 10 days is about to have access to the nuclear codes, he's about to be the most powerful man in the world. Do you want, if there was any truth in this, is it, you know, is it in America's interests for another power, which could possibly come into conflict with the United States one day, we hope not, is it in the US interests for them to have compromising material? Of course not. So they've got to investigate it, they've got to look into it, and they've got to raise it and alert the people concerned. But so far, the Directorate of National Intelligence has not, in the US, has not said if they think any of this is true or not.
Okay, thank you. Thank you very much.
It's murky.
Yep. Thank you, Frank Gardner, our security correspondent. So what about Americans who voted for Donald Trump? I've been speaking to two of them, Amanda Head in California and Alex Chalgren in Colombia. If they believe the claims published by BuzzFeed about Mr. Trump fraternising with prostitutes in a Moscow hotel room.
I believe this about as much as I could throw a Volkswagen.
About as much as you could do what?
Throw a Volkswagen.
What does that mean?
I can't throw a Volkswagen very far, so I don't
see.
trust.
Oh, you mean literally throw a Volkswagen car? Yeah. Sorry. Okay, I'm being really
I'm
fit.
100 pounds. That really wouldn't happen in real life.
Okay. Alex, let me ask you, do you believe the claims in this apparent intelligence dossier?
Absolutely not. I agree with Amanda, and I think that these allegations that are completely unsubstantiated are could be borderline seditious almost, because they're assuming that our president-elect, the future president of the United States, has ties with Russia, and that is just, wow, unbelievable. Yeah, it's dangerous talk.
Just to put in there, I just want to add that, BuzzFeed sent out a memo to their employees admitting to the fact that there was no fact-checking or cross-sourcing. And they said, and I quote, "We have serious reason to doubt the allegations, but they chose to publish it anyway."
The latter half of that,
dollars into that company, and they need to cut them off.
What do you mean?
Right.
I'll come back to cut them off in a second. You're right.
Sure.
The editor-in-chief said there are serious reasons to doubt the allegations, but that's not true to say they hadn't tried to verify them for a number of weeks. They had tried, they had failed to verify them, and took the decision to publish.
So if you try to verify something and you can't, you should go ahead and publish it? That doesn't, that's not journalistic integrity.
Well, they say they wanted, because it's a real story that this document, this dossier is being handed around to politicians at the higher echelons of Washington, and therefore they wanted to put it out there for their readers, they say, for them to, quote, make up their own minds.
If I might intercede, I think we all know this. The higher echelons of D.C. were not pro-Trump, and quite honestly, I think they tried to do everything they possibly could to make sure that Trump wasn't elected, and when he was elected, to make sure that he didn't win the electoral vote confirmation.
So, so just on that point, Alex, it's okay for the CIA and some senators, including John McCain, he's a Republican, I know he's no fan of Donald Trump, but it's all right for those people to have a look at what's in this dossier, but not the rest of us.
Absolutely not. I mean, I think these sort of things should be substantiated first.
Okay. All right. Yeah, that's fair enough.
That wasn't done at the intelligence level either, so...
Yeah. What do you think, Amanda, of Donald Trump lashing out at the intelligence services for what he said was leaking details of Russia's compromising information on him to the media?
Here's the thing, and this is one of the things about my radio program. I call it like I see it. I voted for Trump because the option on the other side was Hillary. I voted for Trump, and I will support him as long as he continues to do the things that he has said that he is going to do, and he does it in a manner of integrity. Unfortunately, that he portrays when he is out in public and he's at a press conference and he's bashing our intelligence. This is where it seems a little bit like, like when you're on the elevator with a husband and wife and they're bickering, it's just really uncomfortable, and it's not something that anyone else needs to see. And I understand that there are issues with our intelligence agency. Even Barack Obama talked about how he doubted the credibility of a lot of the members of our CIA and FBI back in 2012. But those things need to be handled behind closed doors. And sorry, Trump, but this is the kind of stuff that you've got to bring that public persona down a little bit, and you can't tweet every time you're angry. And if you are going to tweet with facts.
OK, that's interesting. Alex, let me ask you about Donald Trump's defence to these fake allegations, as he calls them, that he couldn't possibly have been consorting with prostitutes in a Moscow hotel room as they defiled a bed that the Obamas slept on because he's a germaphobe.
I did not see that. I did not see him say that. Well, that's funny.
If this was any other person, I would be like, that's not really a substantial response, but I could actually kind of see that coming from him.
Okay.
He seems to have some of those like OCD tendencies. And I think that a lot of those OCD tendencies, and you'll see this in psychological studies, that those often results in successful people because they are so particular about certain things.
Okay.
And obviously we know Donald Trump is a success, whether you want to agree with it or not.
I want to ask you about his tax returns. Do you want to see his tax returns published? He did refer yesterday to the fact that his business interests are going to be handed over, the leadership of his business interests, not the ownership, the leadership is going to be handed down to his two sons while he's president. Do you want to see Donald Trump's tax returns published?
No, I care what he does in office.
Alex?
I would kind of like to see that, to be honest with you. And the reason why is because, I trust Trump completely, and that's why I voted for him, and that's why I worked very hard with his campaign. But then again, I think that to make sure that everything is completely detached from his duty as president, from his former work, I think it's just safe to see that that's happening. There's so many different things going around right now with the company and all these other things. It's just hard to tell.
Okay. Thank you both so much for talking to our British audience. We really appreciate it. Thank you very much. That was Amanda Head in California and Alex Chalgram in Colombia.
More than 3,000 American troops, tanks and armoured vehicles arrive in Poland today, the United States' biggest military presence in the region since the Cold War. It's to support a NATO operation to deter any Russian aggression towards countries in Eastern Europe since the conflict in Ukraine and the Russian annexation of Crimea. The troops' arrival comes just days before the inauguration of Donald Trump, who signalled he wants to improve relations with Moscow.